Hi there, accountants. I hope all is well, and I pray that as you're viewing this video that you're in the best of health and spirit. This video will cover Chapter 8, Establishing Budgets and Preparing Bank Reconciliations from QuickBooks Online for Accounting, 7th edition. So upon completion of this chapter, the students will be able to do the following: add budget amounts to create a budget, create profit and loss budget reports, reconcile a checking account, and print a reconciliation report. So in Chapter 7, we had the opportunity to add payroll activities, such as adding employees, adding payroll-related accounts, and recording payroll expenses and liabilities to the Wild Water Sports Company. In this chapter, we're going to add a budget, add a profit and loss budget report, and add a bank reconciliation to the Wild Water Sports Company. And at the end of this chapter, you'll perform tasks that will be assigned by the instructor. So in order to verify the accuracy of the Wild Water Sports, we'll sign in. I'm already signed in, as you see on the right. And then from there, we're going to go to our reports. So as of right now, the navigation bar is closed. I'm going to open it top left. And we're going to go to reports. We'll click on the custom reports tab, and then we'll double click on the trial balance. And from there, we're going to set the date from January 1st, 2027. That date is already there. And the end date is going to be January 31st, 2027. So we'll run the report, and then we're going to compare it to figure 8.1. So the first thing I'll normally always do is I'll check the totals. So I see the total debits equal to total credits, and then go through the accounts one by one to ensure that the account balances are correct. So checking account is $99,358.88. Accounts receivable, $120,770, inventory, $223,350, $70,000, etc. So you want to double check all of the accounts, because again, sometimes there can be a number off, even though the total debits and credits tie. So you always just want to double check. So you'll go through that information again as you prepare to work in this chapter, and you will go through it line by line to make sure everything ties. So once everything ties, now we move on to budget creation. So in this section, we're going to establish a profit and loss budget in QuickBooks Online, which tracks the amounts in the income and expense account. QuickBooks Online is going to interview you to determine the budget amounts, and we're going to create the budget from scratch since there's no historical data in QuickBooks Online. So we'll continue from above. Here it says to make sure the navigation bar is open. So we'll open our navigation bar again. And then from there, we'll click on the gear icon, and we'll select budgeting as shown in figures 8.2. So our gear icon scroll to the right. All right, so for our gear icon, here it's asking us to select budgeting. So if we go here, the gear icon, and we're going to be looking for tools. I know sometimes there are some differences with what we see in the book. So to do budgeting, just keep in mind, here in the instructions it's saying make sure the navigation bar is open. So here the navigation bar is open, and it's asking us to click the gear icon. There's no gear icon. We have the menu here. But here we see that they have budgets. So what we're going to do is click on budgets. And then here it's going to ask us to, well, here it states plan better with budgets. Again, sometimes there are some differences between the book and what's currently in the updated version of QuickBooks Online. So you'll follow along per the video, since obviously there will be some differences between the textbook. So we have budgets open. And then now what we're going to do, we're going to select create a budget. So here we're going to add a budget. And then the period is going to be fiscal year 2027. So the fiscal year is going to be 2027, January 27 to December 2027. And then we're going to type the name as budget 1. All right. And just keep in mind, it is going to be based on the profit and loss. How do we know that? Because it's income and expenses. So that is essentially going to be a profit and loss budget. For the budget format, we're going to keep it as consolidated. Pre-fill data, no, we'll just leave it blank. And then we are going to select next. Let's see what happens if we select Create from scratch. All right, yep, so we're gonna create it from scratch. So profit and loss, fiscal year 2027. So just to make sure everyone's on the same page, again, the gear icon is not taking us to this. We're not seeing tools, whether we, click new. So what's gonna happen is that you open the navigation, you scroll down, you click on budgets, and then instead of it saying add budget, you're gonna select create budget. You're gonna leave it as profit and loss selected, the period. You're gonna change it to 2027, January 2027 to December 2027. It's not asking you for the budget name, so that'll be blank. And we're creating the budget from scratch. So once we input that, we select next. And then next, here we see, obviously, there's some differences, but same thing nonetheless. And then we can update it here if we want. So if you want to update it, the name here is where we would update it. So we would type in budget 1 at the top. And then we scroll down. So here we have the period. And then we see all of these accounts. So we see sales. And in January, it's asking us to input $180,000. All right, so we input the $180,000. And then the next thing it's asking us to do is to copy it across. So we'll check to see if we can copy it across. So here, in order to copy it across, this right facing arrow, we select that. And then from there, we are able to copy it across. So for step 9, where it says copy across, we select this right facing blue colored arrow to click to copy the value across the row. So we just did that. And now it's asking us to type $5,000 in the January service revenue text box. So here's January 2027 for service revenue. We input $5,000. And then next is asking us to save. Now, the next thing is asking us to do is to click the gear icon in the budget window and then select year. So this is the gear icon. This is typically what the gear icon looks like. It looks like a nut and bolt kind of, that's, what I kind of think of, like nuts and bolts. So we click on this, and then it's asking us to select year to view year by year. So it's not giving us that option. We just have auto save. So we'll just select cancel. Reference. So we're going to try to figure it out again because we know there are some differences. So we'll try to see how we can do the same steps. So we have show all reference data, batch actions. Okay, perfect. So we want to do it compact. So we select this. We already have it compacted. So we select apply. Well, it's already there. We should check and hide blank rows. So hide empty rows. So we would select this, hide empty rows. So as it relates to step 11, we would click on the gear icon. Originally, this was unchecked, and this is how we saw it appear. But we want to hide the blank rows. So we select hide empty rows. Then we select apply. Compact is already checked. And then this is essentially what we should see. So sales should be $2,160,000. Service revenue, this wanted us to copy it over. For it didn't say that. Let's double check. All right, perfect. I missed that step. Sorry about that. So we copy it across. Select that. All right, perfect. So now if we scroll down, we should see the following. We see sales of $2,160,000. And then we see the service revenue, the total for the 12 months of $60,000. So we have total income of $2,220,000. Perfect. So we just budgeted for the annual income. Next, it's asking us to click the gear icon again and click month to change the view by month to month and uncheck. But again, as we see here, it's not showing us the month by month. So what we'll simply do, here is where it is. Perfect. So to see it from yearly, it'll be here. Quarterly would be here, and monthly would be here. So as of right now, before it wanted us to select yearly. So again, it's not on the gear icon, but it's at the top right. If we see here, yearly, quarterly, and monthly. Maybe if I see it a little, make it a little smaller. Perfect. So because it's enlarged, that's why some of the things are a bit distorted. So here is where you would see that information for yearly, quarterly, and monthly. But so that way you can see it. We change it back to monthly. Perfect. So it's on monthly. So we scroll down a budget worksheet and we type additional January amounts. So for cost of goods sold, all right, let's make sure we can input the data. All right, so for January, the cost of goods sold is 13,500. So right now it's not letting us input it. So let's see. Perfect. That's why. So here's what happens. When you hide the empty rows, you don't see anything as it relates to the income, etc. So those accounts that are blank. But what you would do is uncheck hide empty rows, save, and then now we can go in and update it. So for our cost of goods sold for the month of January, we have 135,000. Advertising and marketing, we have 10,000. Interest paid of 2,500. And I'm going to input these amounts in the parent account. So for interest paid, we have business loan interest, credit card interest, mortgage interest. So depending on who's preparing the budget, obviously you can input it in the sub accounts. So maybe they're like, okay, $1,000 is for business loan interest, 1,500 for credit card interest, but just for purposes of, demonstration, I'm inputting it in the parent account. Next, for payroll expenses, we have 11,000. For equipment rental, and this one gives us a specific account, which is great. So this one gives us the amount for a sub account, which is 5,000. Supplies, 3,000. Internet and TV, that should be under utilities, 4,000. Phone service of 2,000. And then we have vehicle gas and fuel of 1,000. And then it's asking us to copy across each amount entered for the entire year. So we click across for the vehicle gas and fuel of 1,000. We click across for the phone expense of 2,000 a month. Internet and TV phone services of 4,000 a month. Supplies of 3,000 a month. Equipment rental of 5,000 a month. Payroll expenses of 11,000 a month. Interest paid of 2,500 a month. Advertising and marketing of 10,000 a month, and cost of goods sold of 135,000 a month. So we copy it across, and then now we go back to our gear icon. I'll make this a little smaller. Perfect. So now we go back to our gear icon, and it's asking us to hide the blank rows, and it's asking us to look at it by year. So now when we look at it by year, we input everything. So we essentially click save and close. So we've entered the budgeted amounts and we stored them in QuickBooks Online, and now we view our budget reports. So this will basically let us confirm if we input everything correctly. So QuickBooks Online has two basic budget related reports: budget overview and budget versus actual. So obviously the budget versus actual, that lets you know if you spent too much or if you spent too little in comparison to the budget. So the overview report only lists the budget data. The budget versus actual lists the budget data compared to actual transactions that have been input into QuickBooks Online. So we continue where we left off. We click reports. So we go to our reports and we type budgets in the find report by name. So we type in budget. And then it's asking us to select budget overview. Then from there, it's asking us to customize. So we click customize. We click rows and columns, which is here. It's asking us to select accounts versus total. So you have accounts versus months, account versus quarter. So it's asking us to select account versus totals from the show grid drop-down list. And then from there, it's asking us to run report. So we run the report. Then it's asking us to click collapse. So collapse is here, top left, we collapse it. And then now we match it to this figure in 8.6. So here we see there's sales, and I'm going to make this a little bigger. So we have sales of 2,160,000, which ties service revenue of 6,000. So we have total income of 2,220,000. We have cost of goods sold of 1,620,000. Advertising and marketing of 120, interest paid of 30, payroll expenses of 132, rent of 60, supplies of 36, utilities of 72. So we have total expenses of 450,000. That leaves us with net operating income of 150,000, vehicle expenses of 12,000, total other expenses of 12,000. So that leaves us with net income of 138,000. So everything ties. So now we click customize to modify the budget overview report. So it's asking us to check the without cents box. So we select this. And then now we run the report. All right, so now it's the same thing, just, we don't have the cents essentially. So next it asks us to save the customization, type budget overview in the custom report name. So we update this to budget report. Save it. We click reports once again. So, we're already in the report, so you can select back to reports list, but just so you understand how to get to reports, you always use the navigation bar, select reports. And then once again, we type budget in the find report. So we type in budget, and then now it wants us to select budget versus actuals. So we did that, and it's asking us to click collapse, which we do. From there, we click customize to modify the budget versus actual report. So we select customize, and we're changing the date from January 1st, 2027, which is there, to January 31st. So here's a tip. Anytime you want to change the dates in QuickBooks, if you didn't already know it, if you didn't know, you would use this and go all the way back. But one of the benefits is that you can select this, and then if you click on the month itself, you can select any month. It'll be faster, save you time. So we select January 31st, easy peasy, versus the traditional going back month by month. So we input that, we customize it, we put in the dates, we click the rows and columns. It's already expanded. We select account versus totals. So we update that. And then we check the without cents. So we update this. And then here is just, like showing you what it should look like. All right, we're on accrual basis. We have without cents, negative. We have account versus total. And then we have everything, pretty much matching. So we run the report, and we want it to tie. So we're looking at our actual, and we're looking at our budget. So once we compare this, we want to make sure that everything ties. We see there's total income of 166,000. That's our actual. And our budget is 185,000. So we are under budget by 19,000. You compare the numbers to see, hey, in what areas is the company doing good? Which area is the company not doing so good? Once we finish with that, the last step asks us to save customization. We type budgets versus actuals as the name. Then we click save. So we move on to the next page. And now with the next page, this step is moving us to bank reconciliations. So for our bank reconciliations, good internal control requires frequent reconciliations between the bank records and a company's records of cash receipts and payments completed by someone other than the accountant or the bookkeeper, right? And reason being because, especially, in a business where one person is doing everything, it makes it easier for that person to steal. But when there's segregation of duties, this is an example of good internal controls. The process involves comparing items that appear in the checking account with those items appearing on the bank statement. Deposits that appear in a checking account but do not appear on the bank statement are referred to as deposits in transit. Checks that appear in a checking account but do not appear on the bank statement are referred to as outstanding checks. And they'll usually appear as checks on the next bank statement. So in QuickBooks Online, if we discover that there's a deposit that was recorded by the bank but not recorded in the checking account, then we determine, hey, you know what, there's an error. So we'll correct the error by recording deposit. And likewise, if we discover a check that's recorded by the bank but not in our checking account, then we need to correct the checking account. So to create a reconciliation for the Wild Water Sports, we'll do the same. We'll do the following, rather. We continue from above. We're there. We make sure that the navigation bar is open. We just opened it. States for us to click the gear icon and select reconcile as shown in figure 11. Obviously, we look here. We do not see anything about reconciliation. So we have two options. We can search for reconciliation. If we check the gear icon here, under tools, this is essentially where we would see reconciling. As we see here, once this is expanded, a lot of what we need to see is missing, but obviously now that it's smaller, minimized, here is the gear icon, and under tools, this is where we would find budgeting, and this is where we would find reconciling. So you can find it two places for the budgets. The budgets would be here in the navigation pane or gear icon under tools. So we start with reconcile. We select get started. We select let's get reconcile. And then we want to make sure that the checking account is the one that is selected. So right now it's the cash account, but we want to reconcile the checking account. So we make sure that we reconcile it. And here's what we see. Which account do you want to reconcile? We want to reconcile the checking account. And the beginning balance is $25,000. So for the statement ending date, it is going to be 01 31 20 27, and then the ending balance is going to be $103,396.77. So once we input that information, we select start reconciling. And again, because this is expanded, certain things we can't fully see, so I'm going to make it a little smaller for the sake of us seeing everything. We see the reconcile, check-in form shown in figure 813 as we see here. So we see that there are some deposits, there are some checks, etc. So after review of the company's most recent bank statement and a comparison with the company's checking account, we discovered that there's some checks and payments recorded in the checking account that do not appear in the bank statement. So it's asking us to click the payments tab, which we do. And it's asking us to place a check next to all checks except for checks 111, 112, and 113 because they didn't clear the bank. So we have two options. We can select all of them and then uncheck the three, or you can decide to just select them one by one. Same thing, get the same result. It doesn't really matter, whichever you prefer. So again, the key thing is we select all of the checks except for 111, 112, and 113. We leave those unchecked. After review of the company's most recent bank statement and a comparison with the checking account, we discovered that there's some deposits and other credits recorded in the checking account that do not appear in the bank statement. So we go to deposits and we place a check next to all deposits and other credits. So we click the three and we click the all tab. And once we click the all tab, we'll see that our account should be reconciled. So one of the key things is that we need to make sure that there needs to be a zero difference. If there's a difference, there's a problem. That means that there's something wrong either in a checking account or in the bank statement. We need to figure out where the issue is. But in this case, everything tied. So once we've reconciled the account, we're good. We see that the zero difference is displayed. We know that check 111, 1012, and 1013, those didn't clear as yet. So we select finish now. Then we select done. And then from there, it's asking us to click the history by account, and this will show a summary of all reconciliation reports completed. So we select history by account. And here we see that this is the first reconciliation, January 31st, 2027, reconciled on date. The ending balance changes. Nope, so we're good to go. So next thing it's asking us to do is to select view report. So we view the report. We place the check next to the hide additional information box. So we check that. And then from there, we see the upper portion of the report. So we see the reconciliation report, who reconciled it, the date. We see the statement beginning balance, the amount of checks and payments that were cleared, the deposits and other credits cleared, and essentially how we got to the statement ending balance. And then we check to see, were there any uncleared balances? What was the register balance as of January 31st, 2027? From there, it's asking us to click the printer icon. So we scroll up, we print it. Click print if you want to save it as a PDF or print the actual report. And that brings us to the end of reconciliation and the end of this chapter. So in this chapter, we created a profit and loss budget for 12 months, prepared a budget overview report and budget versus actual report, and reconciled the checking account. In the next chapter, we're going to work with adjusting journal entries.